through our Jamboard. Now we'll look at some examples of activation functions. Obviously, these are the non-linear because we don't want to use linear functions anyways. Okay. So let us see. So there are three types of functions that non-linear functions that we are going to see here. First is ReLU, then sigmoid, and then softmax. So let us move on to the next slide. Sigmoid function. So sigmoid, the graph of sigmoid function basically. Yeah, so this is the graph of our sigmoid function. The function is basically f of x is equal to 1 upon 1 plus e power minus x. And the graph, we can see that the sigmoid, the output of the sigmoid function is basically a value between 0 to 1. Then we'll just see the what differentiation of a sigmoid function is. And yeah, this is the notation we use for sigmoid function. It is basically something like this. And the differentiation of this function, just keep in mind, now a lot of people would be wondering why are we learning differentiation here, but just keep this in mind that the function's differentiation is something like this. That's all we need to know right now. So yeah, so what we saw, the sigmoid function ranges from 0 to 1. Yeah, the sigmoid function ranges from 0 to 1. Its input can be anything between, can be anything on the number line, like for if we move to the left side of the negative x-axis, we get an output which is close to 0. If we move too far from the positive axis, we again get an output 0. So basically, where do we use this function? As I said earlier, that sometimes we need our output to be between 0 and 1. And that's why, and that, and what our activation function is doing is that it squeezes our output to be a value between 0 and 1. So basically, we use sigmoid functions in the output layer. Basically, it is used in output layer. You will know why do we use it in output layer. So basically, it is used in output layer of binary classification, where we need an output as either 0 or 1. Then the ReLU function, which is the most popular function here, which stands for rectified linear unit. So basically, ReLU function is a lot popular now because of the ease of using it. So what ReLU function is, basically it is just maximum of 0 to z. That is, if an input is positive, it will give the value whatever it is. So for a positive z, it will give a z. If it's negative, then if the input value is negative, then it is going to give an output as 0. And yeah, the differentiation of ReLU is basically, I hope everyone knows here differentiation and calculus. So differentiation of this function is basically 1 because the slope is 1. You can see this is basically a straight line, which y equal to x straight line, whose slope is 1, and for negative it is 0. So that's the differentiation of it. Just a second, guys. Yeah, so sorry, I just reshared the screen. Yeah, cool. So we saw what ReLU function is, we saw what we saw what sigmoid was, we saw then ReLU function, which is basically which was basically maximum of 0 to x, and it will give a positive value of x if it's x, if the input is x, and it will give a 0 if the input is negative. Now, yeah, so as I said earlier, ReLU is the most widely used activation function. Its nature is non-linear, which means we can easily back propagate. Okay, big terms back are going to come. Back propagate. Don't worry. We are going to know what back propagate means, and yeah, that's it. Just know that it's a nonlinear functions, and it's most widely used, and it is chiefly implemented in hidden layers of the neural networks. Then the users. At a time, only few neurons are activated, making the networks pass and making it efficient and easy for computation. All of these things, big sentences and words, you're gonna get all of this will get clarified in the future slides. So don't worry. And now we saw one thing that we saw is that when the input was positive, we get some positive value, right? Suppose it was 1, then we would get 1. Suppose it was 2, then we would get 2. But then if the input value was negative, then we got a straight 0. I think that's a problem, right? It's like, what if we get some the value of z as some negative -1? Then this function would just straight away give 0, right? And not in all cases we would need a ReLU function, right? Sometimes we may need a negative, we may get negative outputs, and for that negative output, the ReLU function, what it would give is a 0 output. So we don't need that, right? Sometimes we for this we need some solution. So the solution is basically another function which is called as a leaky ReLU. The positive part of the leaky ReLU function is same as the ReLU function, which is basically f of y is equal to y. But for the negative part, the function is like f of y is equal to some a times y. And now this a is a very small value, like 0.0001x. So like a real small value, not some 10, 1, 2, 3 values, just some decimal values, 0.001. So that is A in leaky ReLU. Yeah, so as I said, that the value of A is really less, so it's just a little deviating from the x-axis. The leaks helps us to increase the range of the ReLU function. Earlier you saw in ReLU that in the ReLU function, for the negative input, it was just giving a 0. So we needed a function which would give some value for negative inputs other than x. So we got a leaky ReLU function. Then moving forward, yeah, we have softmax function. The equation of this is real complicated. So yeah, it's some e power xs. So just know that it is just know this, that it is this function whose range is basically from 0 to 1, similar to the sigmoid function we saw earlier. And this is the graph, how it gradually increases and reaches 1. So softmax function. So main advantages of using softmax is the output probabilities range. The range will be 0 to 1, and the sum of all the probabilities will obviously be equal to 1. Properties of this softmax function are that the calculated probabilities will always have a range of 0 to 1. You saw that everything, all of its output will be between 0 to 1. And yeah, where this function is used, it is used in multiple classification logistic regression model. In building neural networks, softmax function is used in different layer levels. So that's all you should know about softmax. If you want to know about more activation functions, now you can just explore it after this. Now a quick recap of what all we have learned up till now. So first we saw weights. I guess everyone is here. So this is going to be a quick recap. So what did we saw first? We saw what weights are, then we saw what bias are, then we saw the significance of bias, then we saw what forward propagation meant, then we saw simple perceptron, then we saw what activation functions are, why do we need a nonlinear activation function, and that was all we have learned up till now. So see what we did. We gave some inputs to our neural network. We calculated some equations and it gave some output here at the output layer. Then now what should we do, right? I mean, like, this is it, right? We give some input. We initialize the weights randomly. This was another doubt that a lot of people were having. Weights are always initialized randomly at the beginning, and we are got to know the right weights. So we just initialize it randomly. Now, yeah, that's the only way we are going to do. You will understand why do we initialize weights randomly, and how do we get the right predictions, still get the right predictions. This whole process will be clear at the end of this session. So what we did, we gave some inputs, we initialized some random weights, we calculated the values of the, we solved those equations and we got some output. Now, yeah, we solved some equations, we got some output. Now what? Like, what should we do, right? Now we'll calculate loss, obviously. Now we gave random weights, so how can we even expect to get a proper prediction, right? Our prediction will obviously be deviated from some point. So we'll calculate loss again. So what loss is? Loss is simple. It is the deviation from the target value, or you can also see loss as the predicted minus target. This is loss basically if I'm predicting, if my predicted value is 5 and expected to the value to be 1, then the error or the error is 4, right? You can also think loss as an error. So yeah, machines learn a lot of learn by means of loss function. So basically what loss function tells us that how well our model is working, right? How good it is predicting, how bad it is predicting. How would we know? By calculating the loss. So basically what loss is just nothing but deviation of our predicted output from the expected output. So yeah, so to understand a little more about error, consider this is the line. This line is what our neural network predicted, and these are the points that these are the actual expected values that we were expected, but our neural network gave some value here. For this point it gave some here, and for this point it gave some output here. So basically this red line between each purple dot and this blue line is nothing but our error. So these are these errors. So cool. Now we learned about what a loss is or what error is. Basically you can say that loss is analogous to error. So now we calculated loss. Now what? Now cost function comes into the picture. So what cost function is? So loss is basically, we calculate loss for a single training example. Okay. And we know that for neural networks we use tons and tons of data, and so we are going to have some m or n number of training examples. So what cost function is basically, it is the average of the loss functions. So loss function is basically, for you can understand it easily by this thing. Loss function is for one training example. Cost function is basically for all our training examples. So loss function mathematically it takes some parameters, weights and biases, and then that is basically cost function. And what cost function gives us is basically a single value, and that single value tells us how good or how bad our network is performing. So yeah, suppose we had some weights W and P. So basically cost function is will be a plane. It can be three-dimensional plane or multi-dimensional, because as the number of weights increase, this function will become from three-dimensional to 4, and then it will keep on increasing. So basically what all you should know here is that cost function is suppose we in this picture, this is our cost function. It is some multi-dimensional plane. In here it is a three-dimensional plane, so that is cost function. So let us take a little intuition of what cost functions are. So yeah, so cost function, so we get some value. So we predicted y equal to 50, actual was 200, right? So the prediction is pretty poor, right? And the error we got was 150. So that is what our cost function is. But yeah, that's the intuition about cost function. You can say it's basically an error that helps us analyze how good or how bad our network is performing. Yeah, cost function is also a way of telling that whatever output you are giving the neural network is utter trash, and that's a bad network. Okay, so cost function spits out, as I said, cost function gives a single value, a single number, and that number basically tells us how good or how bad our network is. So if that cost function value is some big number, then yeah, we can say then obviously we will say that bad network, right? And if that cost function is minimum, that is our error is minimum, then we can say yeah, our network is just doing good, right? So that's cost function. So again so to make our model better, obviously we will want to decrease the error. Like, of course, that's the biggest thing, right? You want to make something better, then you have to decrease the error in it. So yeah, to make our model better, we have to decrease our cost function. And how are we really going to do that? It's like, how will we decrease this cost function? And the answer is basically gradient descent. So moving on to, before moving to gradient descent, let us just see this picture. I hope this will just remind you of what you have learned in calculus in your 11th or 12th standards. So suppose we had a function f of x, and we were told to find the global optimum points, or we were told to find find a particular value where the function reaches its minimum value. Suppose there was a function f of x, and we were told to find the value of x for which it will give the lowest y. And how will we really do that? Obviously, we have learned that all we have to do is that we have to differentiate it and differentiate and equate to 0. That's how we used to find these local minima and global maxima points, right? Differentiate the function, put it to 0, solve the equations, and we will get the values of x for which the y is lowest. So keep this concept in mind. So next is gradient descent, as I told you earlier. So you guys might have learned what gradient descent is in our earlier track, MLFS beginner track. We did explain what gradient descent is. Just a small recap. So consider what basically gradient descent is. It is an iterative optimization algorithm for finding the local minimum of a differentiable function. And in our case, this differentiable function is the cost function. I told you earlier that cost function is basically some plane. Suppose this reddish part is our cost function. Then gradient descent, what gradient descent is? Gradient descent is finding the minimum. Gradient descent is nothing but finding the values of weights and biases for which we get the cost function minimum. That is nothing but gradient descent. So we'll move on. Now quick recap. So what we did, we made a neural network with one hidden layer. We randomly initialized some weights and biases to our neural network because obviously we didn't know what should we initialize it. So we just randomly initialized some weights. Then we predicted our output by calculating z and giving it to the activation function. We got some y as output. But then our model predicted an output that was far away from our real output. So we calculated the loss, right? We calculated the loss and then cost function, which basically told us how good or how bad our network is. And since our predicted output was way deviated from the real output, our network did a really bad job. So now obviously what we should be doing is that we should be adjusting those weights and biases to get a good output, because earlier what we did was we randomly initialized some weights and biases, and because of this random initialization of weights and biases, the output was such a crappy output, and and that's why we got an error, right? So now our goal is to now our main goal is to find those right weights and biases so that our network predicts